Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining me tonight in the shop. I'm going to step well outside of my comfort zone this evening. On this knife right here, we're going to go ahead and build a handle. And I typically make shoulders like this and make a guard that sits right up against those shoulders and then build a handle off the back of the knife. But on this one, I've decided to get fancy. I want to do something different. I want to do something that I've never done before, and I can't really find any information on how to do it. What I'd like to do is I'd like to build a guard that's curved like this, that curves forward onto the blade. Now this is a hidden tang knife with a forward curved guard. I've got some ideas of how I can accomplish this. So let's just jump right in and kind of see if my ideas work or if they don't. Thank you for liking my videos, for hitting the thumbs up, for subscribing to my channel, for leaving me comments. All those things stroke all the right metrics for YouTube to let them know that you guys are liking my videos. And I'll tell you what, I had no idea how incredible this community was until I started my YouTube channel. I don't know how I ever made knives without sharing my experiences with you guys. And I want to tell you guys about another channel here on YouTube that I really like. His name is Brian and his channel is Houseworks. He's creating tons of good content and his editing is top notch. You guys got to go over to Houseworks and check him out. He's really cool. And one thing that he's got over there is a DIY 2x72-inch belt grinder kit. It looks really premium, guys. He sells it. All the parts are cut out. All you have to do is finish assemble it, add a motor, and you're off to see the wizard. It looks really cool. So I highly encourage you guys, if you're looking to get into knife making, don't go out and buy one of these expensive grinders. Look into Brian's do-it-yourself kit. It'll save you some bucks and you'll get a premium grinder. So I'm going to put the link down below to go over to Brian at Houseworks and just check him out. He also does a podcast that I've fallen in love with. He's a part of The Makery, which is Makers by Makers for Makers. It's a podcast that they do every week. And if you're into knife making, you can turn this podcast on in your shop while you're just working and you can listen to it, and it's like-minded individuals talking about trials and tribulations of working in the shop. You guys are gonna love it. I scavenged some copper material here. This material, this was a 2-inch round pipe and I cut a section of it and then just flattened it out. You know, you can buy this in sheets and it's fairly expensive, or you can go this route. It's really easy to flatten out. This particular guard I'm going to be manipulating around a round surface to get the shape that I want, so I don't really care if it's perfectly flat to start. First thing I need to do is figure out the radius that I want. Now I need to be able to form this copper around the radius of something in my shop. So I'm thinking I'm going to use a hammer, the roundness of a hammer, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I'm going to grab a small hammer first and lay it up here and see if that's the right radius. Now I want it to go all the way from the top of the knife to the bottom of the knife, the guard, how it's going to curve around. So therefore I could set that right up against there. So this is too small because it would bring the radius of the guard all the way up over the flat. So let's just jump to this larger hammer here and let's try that one out. Oh, now see, that one works out really nice. If I go from right there to right there, it puts the radius right within the boundaries of where I want it to be on this flat, and it doesn't come off onto here. So this is a good one. Okay, so here's my plan. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to cut a strip. I'm going to square up the sides. We'll throw it in the milling machine, and the first thing I'm going to do is mill a slot for this tang. And then what we'll do is we're going to lock this in a vise, and we're going to beat that copper over this to get this radius. Let's go do that. So I'm going to go ahead and take my hammer and I'll put it in here. Do note that I took this part of the hammer and put it against the vise. So when I hammer here, this isn't going to move around. When I hammer on this, it won't move because the handle of the hammer is leaned firmly up against the vise there. And now I could take my material. Here's my material. I could take my material that we've milled the slot in, and I can lay it on here and start to round this over to curve it, okay? Now I will just beat this until it's completely rounded over. And this is what we'll end up with right here. I went ahead and did this right here for you so you could see. how I rounded it over just with this hammer right here, like that. The first one that I milled the slot the same size that I would normally mill a slot for these. And what I found out is after you bend the radius, that's as high as you can get the radius to go because the slot's not wide enough. The slot actually has to be the same size as this, right, as your total opening right here. So the slot had to be quite a bit larger. And then to get the fitment that I really wanted, I had to come in here and I had to cut a shoulder here and here on the other side that's perfectly flat. And what I mean by that is I put this in the vise like this. Well, can you see me here? There we go. I put this in a vise just like this, and I took my file and I ran it through like this so that I could cut a flat on this side and this side for the flat part of the tang to sit on. Okay, so the top and bottom of the knife actually firmly sit right there and right there. And that gives me this curvature that I'm looking for. Now, here's another thing that you have to take into consideration doing this. The other thing that I normally do is when I do a guard, I like to stop my guard right at flush with the knife at the top, and then I normally have a finger spur that comes off the bottom. I can't have it flush with the top because of the way that this is milled all the way over to the edge where it has to sit right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut an oval shaped guard that's slightly larger than the knife on the top and the bottom, and then I'm going to flare out to it so the handle will flare up to the guard, and that'll give me some space on the top and bottom, because if I cut this flush here, then effectively what would happen is I would radius this right here right around, and there would be no meat left in the guard, and this guard could literally fall apart. So we certainly don't want that. I've got this guard formed and I've got it fit. I can't really put it in there because the last time I put it in, I'm going to hammer it on and it's going to be there for good. So there's a couple other things that we need to do. So this guard, I went ahead and took a ball peen hammer and I put it on here and I put a hammered finish. I didn't use a punch like I normally would do. I used the round part of a small ball peen hammer just to give me a hammered texture on this, because I'm really liking that hammered texture right now. I just think it's really appealing and it's a good way to do things. And I think as the copper starts to form its own patina, it looks really cool too. It looks a lot better than just a highly polished piece of copper with the patina, because when you hammer the finish like this, when it patinas, you don't have it kind of varies in color. So to me, this turns really cool looking. Anyhow, I think the next thing that I need to do, now that I've got this round and it's the way that I want it and it fits on the knife, I'm going to take this to my handle material. And when I shape my handle material, what I think I should do is draw a line in here on my material. And then when I cut my material, I'm actually going to cut my material slightly larger on both the outside portions of it, so that when I clamp it together, my handle material slightly expands this out versus not taking up all the slack. So that's just a fitment thing that I'm going to do to make this fit nice. And I'm also going to do a segmented handle where I have a front piece and then a back piece on the handle. So let's go ahead into right into handle shaping or handle making now. Tonight we're going to do another handle material showdown. We got some Gaboon Ebony that we're going to mate right up to some tiger maple that I stabilized myself. And we're going to put that on our sanmai blade that we made last week. So super cool. Let's go ahead and jump in and get it done. Alright guys, here's the Gaboon Ebony. It is almost jet black. It's got some nice streaks in it. It is packed in wax, so I've scraped most of the wax off. And what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go in and sand the rest of the wax off and really get it clean before we go on to the next step. I'm going to mate this up to some pretty insane tiger maple that I have here. I stabilized this myself in a vacuum chamber. This stuff is really awesome, guys. But this Gaboon Ebony is what we're showcasing tonight. I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a really rock solid hardwood that doesn't need to be stabilized or anything like that, but we're going to find out. We're going to jump in here and we're going to start sanding on it, see how it smells, see what kind of sanding grits that we need, and then I'm going to try a couple different ways to finish this out and see what gives us the best finish. Gaboon Ebony. I'm going to trace out my handle. Well, this is an absolutely gorgeous piece of wood that I ruined. What? It just, I clamped it in the vise too tight, and I clamped it right here at the bottom, and it went pop. It literally went pop, and it popped right on the curl. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild? Super, super crazy. What a bummer. Incredible piece of wood ruined. What a bummer. We're going to jump into the ebony. Let's see how it drills first. Let's just check out how easily or how hard ebony drills. This is should be pretty decently hard wood. So it likes to gum up the drill bit like ironwood does. So it is a very hard wood. Okay, so this material drilled really easily. I know it's dark and it's hard to see on camera, but it did drill very easily. Alright, I've got my knife and my glue up jig right here. So I've clamped the blade, I've got the guard installed, I've got all of my parts cleaned up with acetone. I'm going to mix my glue, and then we're going to stick this thing together. I'm going to clamp it and let it set up. Here we are, 24 hours later, came out, this is all set up. The first thing I do when I come out is I come to right there where I mixed my epoxy, and I make sure that it's set up really good and hard. And you know, you can just get your epoxy out like that. You could just pick your epoxy up, make sure that it's set up really good. And that tells you exactly what it did on the inside of your handle too. You know, that's the first thing I do when I come out after glue up the next day, is I reach down and I test my epoxy. Everything went really good, so I'm going to go ahead and unclamp this and yeah, move on. That's the basic handle shape I'm going to go for. Alright, so here's a good tip for you. On this ebony, you can see you can see the dust. It just turns you black. Well, I've got it made it up against a lighter material. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go ahead and get this finished out. Now I finished this out with the sanding block first, and now I'm just blending it together with my fingers. That's how come I'm sanding with my fingers as a backer. This is generally not a good idea to do until you're at this stage. Everything is sanded out. Now I'm taking the 220 and I'm just kind of smoothing things out, smoothing out the lines that I already put in with my sanding jig. I use this to sand back and forth. But what I wanted to show you was I worked the black material separately from the lighter material. And then I blow away the dust, and then I come in with different paper that I use on that lighter material, and I sand that material. And it's a good idea to even wipe your hands off too, because your hands have that black dust. And what happens is, if you're not careful, you can stain the lighter material with the black particles from the black wood. And that's not what you want, because you want it to be a striking contrast between the two colors. So you don't want to drag all this black dust in and infiltrate the pores of the lighter color wood. So that's what I'm trying to tell you here is, you know, make sure you're conscious about not dragging all the black dust into your lighter color wood. So you sand them separately like this. It's one thing to sand, when you're done up here with your lighter color wood and you want to blend it, to pull backwards, because this will clean out of the darker wood easier than the dark particles out of the light wood. There we go. Alright guys, teak oil. The finish that I've chosen for this, we've got, I'm going to actually give you a little bit of a idea of what it looks like before I do any finish on it. It came out really cool. It's going to look awesome. Okay, I'm going to finish this by putting on a penetrating teak oil. I'm going to let that dry and set up, and then I'm going to come through and I'm going to buff this with a buffing compound and really bring it to a high luster. And then I'm going to seal it with a wax. Okay, so we've got a tiger maple that's stabilized up against the Gaboon Ebony. The Gaboon Ebony. This ebony has some streaks in it, and I'm wondering if we're going to see those streaks pop out. So let's go ahead and start applying this teak oil. Teak oil will go deep. It's basically tung oil that's cut with naphtha. Boy, that made that ebony jet black. Wow, look at that. Ooh-wee. I'm gonna have to go back to sanding. I've got a tiny spot right there that is still at 220 grit, and I need to bring that up to 500, and then out right there, I've got a tiny spot right there that needs to come to 500, and I noticed right on this transition I've got kind of a hazy spot also. See how it didn't really polish right there? Because that didn't get to a full 500. But everything else is looking really sweet. So I'm going to touch this up. I'm going to touch this area up right here. Right there. It's just this real skinny little sliver right there. And I'll probably go ahead and touch up right there on this side. Oh, yeah, it looks like a little tiny bit right there. But everything else is looking good. And that's what happens when you go to do your fine polish. You'll see any of your mistakes that you had made earlier on. And that's going to be a fine handle. Really nice handle, guys. Really, really cool. I like how it swells top and bottom. It really indexes in your hand nice. Super neat. Can't wait to do that one again. Hold on, guys. Don't leave me yet. Let's get this thing finished up. We've got it hand sanded out again. We're going to start this process all over with our oil. Alright, now let's go in here and we're going to polish that handle again. The Gaboon Ebony. Let's take a second to talk about the Gaboon Ebony here. You know, this machine's quite a bit like ironwood. It's a very dense wood. It doesn't burn as easily as ironwood. That I could tell you that right now. So when you're sanding this, I was able to sand this to higher grits on the belt sander, and it doesn't burn like ironwood does. Ironwood will char, and then you've discolored the figure. This really resisted building the heat, and it sanded extremely well on the belt grinder. So as far as difficulty in sanding, very easy to sand the Gaboon Ebony. It does get black dust everywhere, but when I do African blackwood, the dust gets in my hands and it'll be there for days. This dust washed right off and it didn't stay in the pores of my fingers or anything. So real easy cleanup on this. It drilled very similar to ironwood, where it would clog the drill bit pretty regularly. So each time that I drilled into it, I'd have to clean the flutes of the drill bit out. Let's move on to finishing the Gaboon Ebony. This you could finish like any other super hardwood. You could just polish it to a high grit and then you can buff it. That's all you have to do. This doesn't require any oil or anything like that. Now, I did an oil finish on this handle, but I did it because of this tiger maple that I had up front. Now, I've never used this before, so when I put the teak oil, the first coat of teak oil up here, I did coat the whole handle because I was curious to see if this would accept any of the oil, and it didn't. It didn't accept any oil. And technically, this accepted very little oil also because this was stabilized wood, but even being stabilized, it would accept just a little bit of oil and accentuate that curl that pops out the curly figure in the wood. So that's why I did the oil. I did the oil just so you'd see that tiger figure pop out in the maple, and then basically I wiped the oil off the handle because it just wouldn't take back here, and then I polished this with some Mother's compound, and it just came out absolutely gorgeous, guys. I'm gonna bring you in and show you up close what this looks like. There it is, guys, all wrapped up. Sanmai blade, copper guard, hammered finish on the top, and it's a rounded guard that rounds forward, and it's flared up here, which is actually really nice. I put a black spacer in there, tiger maple, and then the black Gaboon Ebony that just came out gorgeous. I love this. This knife is super cool. Check out the flex on that, really nice. One thing that I would change on the next one, this is the first time I've ever done a guard like this. Next time, I'm going to cant the guard forward so that the top, here's why. I want the top to be here rather than here. So this pushes my hand back a little bit to put my thumb right there, and then my finger doesn't come all the way forward. I'd like that finger to be there and my thumb to sit farther forward too. So on the next one, I like the round guard. I'm just going to tilt it forward just a little bit. But man, is that a really nice feel where it flares into the guard, top and bottom. I mean, it really indexes your hand. It's so light, you can barely even tell that you have it in your hand. So of course, I've got smudges on this blade from playing around with it in the shop and stuff like that. But you know, that's kind of part of it, right? Super cool. Hey guys, that concludes this video. If you've enjoyed it, then I encourage you to go over and check out my Handle Material Showdown playlist. That playlist houses all the videos where I put together various handles using all different types of materials. So if you're curious how to use these other types of materials, go over there and check out that playlist. Not only that, but every knife that I make is different, so you're going to see different handle shapes and different techniques of how I put these together. I'll put a link to the playlist right here for you. Thanks for watching my videos, guys.